Hey CWOL kids, glad you joined us today. I'm so excited to see every single one of your face. I see it in the lens right now. So we have an awesome message for you today, so just tune in, get ready. It's gonna be great, it's gonna be awesome.
You see in me is Jesus. I'm gonna show my friends and family this light glowing inside of me. I'm gonna shine for all the world to see. Oh, 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 I'm gonna shine a light. Oh, 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 I'm gonna shine a light. Oh, 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 for all the world to see. Is gonna win, 'cause every day I'm gonna follow him. I'm gonna shine for all the world to see. Oh, 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 I'm gonna shine a light. Oh, 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 I'm gonna shine a light. Oh, 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 for all the world to see. I'll show them love, joy, peace, and patience. Goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Come on! Love, I put others first. Joy, I believe God's promises. Peace, I know I'm God's child. Patience, I can wait. Kindness and goodness, I care about others. Faithfulness, you can count on me. Gentleness, I am ready to listen. And self-control, I won't let sin win. I'm gonna shine a light. Oh, 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 I'm gonna shine a light. Oh, 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 for all the world to see. I'll show them love, joy, peace, and patience. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I'll show them love, joy, peace, and patience. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
Okay, have you ever said something that you're like in the middle of it and you're like, what did I just say? That is crazy. That is stupid. Like you're thinking, oh my goodness, that was stupid. Why? That doesn't even make sense. Or like maybe people start looking at you like, what did you just say? Why did you say that? Well, that reminds me of somebody in the Bible, and I want to see if you know who this person is. So here's a question for you.
Who was Andrew? King, disciple, tax collector.
So, did you know who this person was? What was your answer? Was it disciple? If you said disciple, you're right. He was a disciple. His name was Andrew. Andrew was one of the disciples. He actually followed John the Baptist before he met up with Jesus. So he really had a hunger for God. He really was wanting to serve God. But there's a fact about Andrew. I have another question for you. You ready? Here we go. Let's look.
The other disciple was Andrew's brother, James, Judas, Peter.
So, what did you think? Whose brother is he? Did you say Judas? Did you say Peter? Peter, the guy who cut the soldier's ear off, that is his brother. Peter and Andrew were brothers. Is that not neat? I mean, here they are, they're traveling together, they're ministering together. That is just you just don't really think about it because you hear a lot more about Peter than Andrew, but they're brothers. Brothers. Okay, so Andrew, I want to talk about Andrew, and we're actually going to talk about, do you remember when Jesus fed the 5,000? Remember when it was like that boys' lunch? Can you answer this question? Here we go.
How much food did Jesus feed the 5,000 with? 5 fish and 2 loaves. 3 loaves and 2 fish. 5 loaves and 2 fish.
So what? Did you get the right answer? Did you say 5 loaves? And did you say 2 fish? 5 loaves and 2 fish. If you said that, you're right. Well, okay, so we're going to talk about that story a little bit. But a lot of times we think about this story, wow, 5, 2. But you know what? Let's talk about Andrew. Because Andrew, there was something big going on with Andrew. Because everything that Jesus did was to show God, to show who God is, how God thinks, what God is able to do. And so Andrew, we're seeing something go on with Andrew. You see this behind me where it says head or heart? Did you know that we can actually follow either our heart, that God's speaking to us through our heart and we're following our heart, or we can follow our head, what we're thinking, what we think should happen, how we think it should be. Oh no, this doesn't make sense. We can either follow our heart or our head. Well, that's exactly what happened with Andrew. Y'all want to find out? See, Jesus, he looked out and he saw at least 5,000 men, plus children, plus women. So it was over 5,000 people. He looks out there and he's like, he knows they need to eat and he wants to feed them. So the Bible says in John 6 that he looks over to his disciples and he says to Philip, hey, where can we get enough bread to feed all of these people? And Philip looks around. Philip was another disciple and he looks around and he's like, if we took a half a year's salary, 6 months of salary, paychecks, every paycheck for 6 months, and we took it, we would not be able to buy enough bread for them to only have 1 bite apiece. He's like, these people would only get 1 bite, maybe, if we took that amount of money. He's like, there's nowhere to buy it. But Andrew, he heard the same question. And the Bible said that Jesus asked, but he already knew what he was going to do. But it said that he was testing them. He kind of wanted to see what they would think, what they would say about the situation. Because the Bible says that he already knew what he was going to do. Jesus already had his plan. He already knew from God how he was going to handle the situation. But he was asking them to test them, to see what they thought, how they thought the situation be handled, how they thought God was going to do it. And you know what? Andrew jumps in and he's like, hey, there's a boy over here with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he's like, in the middle of him saying it, he's like, 5 loaves, 2 fish, there's a boy. And then as he's saying it, he's like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. This is stupid. What I just said was stupid. I mean, he probably even had maybe the other disciples look at him like, did you really just say that? Did you really just say, there's a little boy's lunch over here? They probably were probably so shocked he said it and was thinking it was so stupid. They probably just looked at him like, oh my goodness. And he immediately, he's in the middle, he's like, 5 loaves, 2 fishes. And then he's like, but what is that with all of these people? I mean, see, right there, his heart, boom, was like, God can do this. I don't know how God can do this, but here's a start. We got 5 loaves and 2 fishes. But then in the middle of it, guess what? His head started getting involved. His head started doing the math. His head started going, hey, Philip just said about a half year's salary that they would only give him 1 bite. And this guy, it's only 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And he's doing all of this in his head. And he's like, oh my goodness. I shouldn't have said that. But you know what? You know what happened next? Guess what Jesus did? He took the bread. He took the fish. He did exactly what Andrew said. See, and remember, the Bible says that Jesus already knew what he was going to do. And you know what that meant? That Andrew, even though he didn't know it up here, but in his heart, he already knew what God was going to do. And he was tracking with God. He was on the plan with God. He was seeing it. He was hearing what God was saying. Even though he wasn't getting it up here, he was getting it in his heart. And that's why his heart was like, hey, there's a boy over here with 5 loaves and 2 fish. But then his head started getting involved. And his head's like, that's crazy. No way. There's no way. There's no way. You just said the stupidest thing. There's no way. See how fast? See, if he would have kept following his heart, he was going the right way. He was like, that's exactly what the plan of God was. But he started getting his head involved. And you know, that's what we can do too. Remember Abraham? Remember Abraham's really old. He's probably got lots of wrinkles. He's probably gray-headed. He's really old. And his wife is really old. And then God told them they were going to have a baby. And they never had a baby. But they were going to have a baby. And you know what Sarah did? She laughed. And she didn't laugh like, oh, this is great. This is exciting. No, her head was involved. And her head was like, this is crazy. There's no way. This is stupid. And she just was laughing because she's thinking, oh my goodness. Probably how the disciples were like, did you just really say that, Andrew? And they probably were wanting to laugh at him. And that's how she was. She laughed. Because it sounded so crazy to her. But you know, that's why we have to follow our heart. Because some of the things because see, nothing's impossible with God. Nothing's too hard for him. Nothing's too difficult. And he can take 5 loaves and 2 fish. Which sounds crazy to our head because we can't do the math. We're like, that's no way. Because that little boy could have eaten that. You remember Noah, Mr. Noah eating that bread? That was bigger. That was probably equivalent to like probably 5 loaves of this kid, because the bread back then was little. And he was sitting there, he ate the whole thing. Well, no, he shared a little bit with somebody here. But he was like, that's why it's like, that's one person. And that's why they were like, this is crazy. But see, with God, nothing's too hard for him. Nothing's too difficult for him. Nothing's impossible with him. I mean, like one time there was a guy that was blind, and he took mud and he spit in the mud, and put it on his eyes. And like everybody around was probably going, what? That's crazy. That's crazy. What are you doing? But see, that's why we have to follow our heart. Follow what God's speaking to your heart. Just like Andrew, his heart was like right there. I mean, because he didn't know. I mean, Jesus hadn't told the plan yet, but he jumped in and he was like, hey, there's a boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And that was the plan of God. And see, his heart knew it all along. But then his head tried to come along and stop it. So that's why we have to follow our heart. Follow what God's saying to you. Even if you're going, this is crazy. There's no way. There's no way. I mean, like, let's take it with something of you. Like maybe you've never had an A on a math test. Never. Maybe the closest you've ever gotten was a C. But you know what? Nothing is too hard for God. Nothing. You're up here, you could be going, I've never gotten an A. I'll never get an A. I'll never. But in here, you know God's telling you, no, trust me. With me, you can have an A. See, that's why we have to follow our heart. Because sometimes some things God says can sound so crazy to our minds, because we're just like, how? We can't figure it out. We're like, how can this happen? How can this happen? How did the bread keep going? Did you know that they ended up, after it said everybody ate and everybody was full, not just had a bite, but everybody was full, and they had 12 baskets left over. 12. They started out with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And they ended up with 12 baskets full left over. See, our head, we're like, that's impossible. So that's why we follow with our heart. We follow God with our heart. Because you know what? Your heart is going to believe. Your heart is always going to believe, even when your head is going, no way. But your heart. So follow God with your heart. Like Andrew, man, he was right on it. He knew the plan of God. But then his head started trying to get involved. So just don't let your head get involved. Just if God said it, believe it. Even if up here it's going, how? There's no way. I don't see how. But if he said it, you can believe it and just follow your heart. Well, I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.